people from Chile, Mexico, Colombia, and Peru, 2 from each country. There were people from agriculture, they were veterinarians, they were environmental engineers, and also soil technicians. That generated a very interesting pool of knowledge. We were divided in 2 or 3 people. Manuka Farms, it's an industry that manages 44,000 heads of livestock in the south of Chile. And those 44,000 are divided in different areas. And each room manages around 650 to 1,200 cows in production. So I was one of those rooms that it was called San Luis that managed 85 cows with 4 people. This management is adapted from the New Zealand model, is adapted for the south of Chile. What I learned? The first parts were 3 things. And I think those are the pillars for the pasture management in New Zealand. And these, if we manage, and we manage to adapt it to our small farmers, they could get really important changes. The first one is the pastures. That's the most important. That's what we've been talking around the whole day. And then livestock, and then also the staff. They influence in the more efficient livestock, a sustainable livestock, and also with more added value to the products. One of the first parts is the efficient use of pastures. So for them, it's not just that pasture is something. They start first with the study of the soil. 2 or 3 days ago, I was in Cusco, 90 kilometers out of Cusco, outside Cusco, in a project from New Zealand. And there are some pilots, the studies of pasture, adapted pastures. And I was in contact with some medium farmers, and it's very interesting. It's very simple, a study of the soil, of the ground. It's easy, but many people, they don't do that to their farms. So they don't know how their farms are. So they invest money. Actually, they don't invest. They spend money in buying fertilizers without measuring that. That's something that it's happening. We need to tackle that problem. Manuka has studies of the ground from all their parcels. So they use different fertilizers for that. And the easiest to better produce dairy livestock is with the pastures, because that's cheaper. So they knew about that, so they are managing that way. So in that way, they can offer specialized fertilizers like urea, purine, triple phosphate. In New Zealand, they use the purine, which is the part of the. It's part of. It comes also from the cows, and then they can use it again as a fertilizer. And also they avoid the fluids like the urine to reach the underground waters, which is also a contamination factor. And they also use winter and summer cultures. What is happening is here, what they use is kind of like, here what they use is like they turn like the ground, if you could say, and use it for the potato. But what they want is that they want that these cultures they can use for also for the food of the cows or the calves. So what they're doing is when the cows, at this crisis moment, they are still using the ground. Many times, here with the topic of the potato, the management of the ground is not that great. So we should look for other cultures that we can use to also for these winter cultures. I don't know why it is like this, but okay. Here they use some systems that measurement system for the dry matter. That is something very important, because that's how they use efficiently their meadows. A matter here also from the medium and small producers is like they over pasture their lands. That means instead of, for example, giving the pastures for the cows, they give it more to their cows, and that generates effects on the pastures. So unfortunately we cannot see it here, but here they have like a dish, a measuring dish, and it offers a measure, an approximate measure. Has a 10% mistake, like for a hectare of parcel, they can offer like an amount of pasture, so they can measure it with more precision. It is more important, it's good to offer the good quantity of pasture for our parcels. And also when you measure this, they offer their pastures, green pastures, just before it flowers, before it seeds. But here, I have the opportunity to be in Puno working with alpacas and llamas. I was also in the jungle in Tocache, and I observed that the people, they are offering their pastures, they are with the seeds. And that is a problem, because really it shouldn't be like that. It should be offered when the plant is with 2 or 3 alive leaves, like the New Zealanders say, or when they are offering 2,500 dry matter. How can you offer that? They see that? They can measure it with this. So when I know how much my parcel is offering me and how many cows I have, so with this program, which is really simple, I can start, making the lines here, or like the divisions of the parcels for the animals that I have. So, and it's technology can be adapted to our areas, can be used. The Kiwi people are quite practical. So when you start observing this, just you can determine how much dry matter a parcel can offer you, and that is very, very interesting. So with these measures, what it's offered is this graph. This with this can use, and they can decide weekly in what area the cows will pasture, and they know exactly what is the coverage, the entry coverage and the outside coverage. And they understand also that the plant has a different behavior in summer, in winter, in every season. So it is necessary to know what is the coverage. So for example, what is the residue of dry matter do I have in that parcel? So that way I know I can make use of it in a more efficient way. So they manage the ryegrass and the clover, and 20% of clover, 80% of ryegrass. So this model, and that makes that the coverage is really spectacular. When I was there, you can see here you can see spots of just dirt, but over there everything was just like full of grass. That's the coverage that we really want. So that's when we can manage efficiently our livestock. So here I was putting here this picture. There are these 2.5 live leaves. That's this, the indication that we know that it's okay, for the cows. So that's how we can show farmers how we can manage our pastures. And something interesting about this part is that after when the areas have more than 2,500 of dry matter, they're gonna grow much faster. So they're gonna be parcels that they're gonna have more of the range that we were thinking. So when they surpass that, for example, the 2,800 kilograms of dry matter in a parcel, it's technified. So they cut those meadows and they made it into balls, and they save it for the moments when there's like a dry season. In that way, they don't have any problems at that moment, and they are offering high quality pastures that are coming from their own parcels. But here in our areas in the Andes, it's like people, they are worried about the dry season. They are thinking, what are we going to do during the dry season? But they never prepare themselves. With this, they could prepare themselves for the dry season. Well, here it should say the pasture model of Manuka. And you can have your own model of pasture in each farm, because every farm, every area is very different. We were seeing with Miranda in Cusco that, for example, how in New Zealand they have a capacity of even 4%. In Chile they manage 3%. It is very interesting. But for example, she was indicating that in Colombia, the study that it's been done, it's 2.8% of consumption of dry matter per live kilo per animal. So every animal is different. Everybody they have to be adapted. That's why the Andean sectors is the consumption is lower, or maybe more. We don't know. So what they're doing is, like, when they know the pasture, they have the curve of how it moves, how it grows, and how it changes. And you have the demand of the cattle. So they only feed the animals with water, mineral salts, and pasture, and that's it. During the dry season, they offer as a maximum 2 to 3 kilos of food, so concentrated food, so in order to keep the cows healthy. So around July, August, September, they have the periods of the birth. It's not like here when we have all year round birth. So that's also a prevention. It's an organization. It's much better that we could manage. And here is when the animal, it needs more a better pasture, and it's also when the pasture is growing, and it's growing much faster, because at that time it's spring. So here during this time they are aligning these two curves, and they reach a balance. As you can see here, the part of the offer surpasses the demand, and what they do is, like, they technified. They plan for when there's dry season. So it's a spectacular management of livestock. Imagine 44,000 cows managed with a model like this, and everyone has like their own curves, and they manage their own pastures in different ways, because the soils, the grounds are different. Well, so they manage also the calendar, and they can do the insemination at the 80% approximately from October to November, because they have a funding. Like also kiwis, they also want to reduce costs, so that also helps in the management. We wouldn't believe that the technology that they manage it's too much, but in reality, this is the technology, the registry of the pastures, the rooms, for milking. But the technology was really management of cattle, pastures, and the ground, and we can do that here. We can replicate it here. Independently that our farmers, they have these different types of parcels. If they start managing their parcels well, we can improve our livestock. So in order to finish, so they have the dry season, and until February all these animals are producing milk. So up until February they are finishing the milk production, and there's months when they are not producing milk. So what does the New Zealander do? they go travel, go on vacation. So here, that's here when the farmers they have vacations. No, they don't have vacations. They were all year round. That's very complicated. That happens here. People they don't take breaks, so they don't have breaks here. So until December, there's a production of 80% of the milk, and here then the production of milk it just reduces, and then the new cycle starts. So here we have the rotation days of the pastures. The moments in summer they reach they reach rotations of 100 days, and maybe in 24 days as well rotation day. That's really quick. There's a moment when the pasture grows really fast, so they manage this type of rotation. We also read an article. We had different classes over there from Monday to Friday, 3 or 4 classes. So they gave us the same knowledge, because sometimes we didn't have all the same knowledge, the previous knowledge. So they gave us an article about Kikuyu. That here, for example, in Peru, we call it as wheat. But in Colombia, they use it as well, the Kikuyu. In New Zealand, you'd use it as a rotation of even 14 days. It's amazing how it grows. And here, our producers, they want to eliminate it. So we have to see how they are managing here with this type, how they're managing the native pastures. One of the parts that also it's quite important for them is like every day what we're seeing is the referent use of the. We're always talking about the high, medium or low production, and they analyze it with the body. For example, for here you can see here this cow, and for example that is 2.5. They cannot reach an extreme. The body condition needs to be really good, like from 3.5 to. So that makes a management of the livestock much faster. Sometimes people they are really tired of controlling the milk from each cow. So what they do is they manage it by the total production and by the body condition. For example, when they see a cow that they doesn't have a good cow condition, that's when they start making decision. So you see that every day they see the evolution of the cattle every day. So they start dividing the lots according to the good body conditions or regular body condition. When it's lower than 3 or above 5, and they start writing it, and they rotate it as well. And it has here like a weekly plan, and they can know, for example, what surface can be given to the cow in the morning and in the afternoon. They offer a surface of 40% in the morning and then 60% in the afternoon. And that makes good livestock. That's how we should be. We should manage everything from the pasture and at a good, and we should manage it and offer it to our cows in a good way. So here, what is the cattle that they use? The famous Kiwi cross, which is a mix of Holstein with Jersey. One is used to find or see the Holstein that are really big animals, but no, they are not. They just want a medium animal or maybe small, because it consumes less dry matter, and that the content of solids and the quality of milk is better. So in here, the cows they were producing, the Kiwi cross were producing 25 liters only with pastures, water and mineral salt. So and I'm sure that we were talking about the greenhouse emission gases. I'm sure that this will be reduced. This is a very ecological livestock, if we could say, and it offers a quality of milk that is better. It's 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 proven that the milk from cows that only eat grass have a better content of acid. It's also that it's been observed in New Zealand, and why people don't start, paying extra for these kind of characteristics. That would be good. Maybe we cannot arrange well better the pictures. They didn't come in like the sequence that I planned. Can you like open it with other program? I'm sorry, but I cannot continue.
¿A qué hora empieza? ¿A qué hora empieza? ¿A qué hora empieza? ¿Sabes? Sí, yo yo no lo envié en PDF. Sí, pero en mi celular.
No va a aparecer la secuencia
No.
porque está en PDF y está pegada, no funciona. Entonces solamente si
ya.
el PowerPoint ya.
Seguiré así nomás. Bueno.
Okay. Among the pillars, because it is important that our cows are always pregnant, because without a calf there's no milk. So that's something that in Latin America we fail. We don't detect, that adequately. So they use this kind of paints that they put in at the base of the tail. So that's the reference. Well, before there was a picture here. Sometimes we miss that. So what they do is here they put that paint, and if they see that the paint has fallen, they can go closer and see if the cow is pregnant or not. The people here, they don't do it. So they keep the cows apart. They put like in different ways so they cannot see it. So and then the cows are not pregnant, and they blame, for example, the people in charge of the insemination, but they have these kind of problems. In order to finish this part of the plant, the staff is really important for Manuka, because they want that their workers, well, really they don't call them workers, they call them collaborators. That they have to be happy, so they can also reach a professional advancements. So they are training them constantly. In fact, in our classes, there were other people who know a lot about what they were teaching us. And it's important to understand the philosophy of New Zealanders, and it's that to understand that the business of livestock is profitable. And there are many practical things that we can do, small things that we can teach our farmers, that, for example, that the farmers need to understand that the cow needs water, how much food they can feed their cows, that they have to be also be checking the calf. But well, topics like that here, they are not being managed, these kind of topics, and that these are very important because most of our production in the Andes and the small and medium producers, they have the calf next to them, and 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 they don't milk. They think that if the cow doesn't have a calf, won't give milk. But thank you very much for Jorge Bernal, who helped me to do the to get together with this association. And really, I think it's because we need to start there. Tell the farmers to know the animals, to understand them, and understand how it's the management, and that the livestock, yes, it's profitable, so their children don't leave, because that's what is happening. The children see that their parents, they are 40, 45 years old, and they are always poor. So obviously people migrate and go to other places when the money is there. So that's what New Zealanders realize. That's what Chile is doing. That's what we realize as well, and take that opportunity, especially the relations with New Zealand. So it is a profitable business that can generate money, but we have to work, and we have to work well. That's something that we are not doing here, the small and medium producers. There are so many, these producers, they are doing so many things. The farmers, they are breeding alpacas, guinea pigs, pigs. If they are not focusing on just one animal, they are not going to do it well. That's something that we need to tell them. So the small and medium producers, they have to decide on just one species. They cannot be divided with so many different kind of animals, because that's going to be inefficient. So something I learned in Manuka, and I'm quite proactive and I like to do so many things, is that to do many things, but we can be multitasking, but do things well. And for example, we were going to the parcels, we were going to the electric fences, and while we were doing that, we were also de-weeding, and I was already thinking that I have to go to the other parcel, and I have to also maybe go and milk, I have to check my cows. So all these different things, it's kind of like the philosophy of New Zealand, to have many tasks, but always doing them efficiently and well. Another thing that we learned there is that the criteria to invest. Here if they cannot do something, they hire another service to do it. What does the farmer do here is, when the farmer has money, they go and they buy, for example, the last model of a car, or they buy a nice tractor, but that they use it maybe once every, I don't know, like every month. So people, they don't know how to invest. They are just spending the money. So that's what they're doing. But New Zealanders, they use efficiently the money, because imagine, with this calendar, you will have a moment for, well, farmers, there will be a moment where that they won't have milk. So the topic here is, like, here people, they say, if I don't have milk the whole year, what am I gonna do? Because I need to sell it, like, to the big buyers, like Gloria. What they need to do is to better manage their money, because otherwise, here, when they don't have milk, they need to manage well their money. So they need to understand how to manage, cash flows, something that they are not doing. Small and medium farmers, they are not doing that. Maybe what they have, it's a notebook with a sheet of paper, but they don't know much. They don't know how much is a liter of milk, or maybe they don't know how much is a day of work. They don't have a salary. It's incredible. I was asking them, like, how much do you earn per month? And they say, like, 25,000 soles, but after your debts, I'm not sure, maybe 100 soles. And so that's people that they have 4 or 5 children. So as a minimum, maybe they had like 2 children. I don't know how they can manage with 100 soles, but it's impossible. But if you have the area, the livestock, they have a good potential to manage everything and to earn money and to generate income. And that way, many people in Peru could also grow economically. Another thing is also here, I was telling them that they were managing this kiwi cross. Not all of them are kiwi cross. It's like 44,000 kiwi cross now. They are mixed. This was a lot of some of them. But here we always want the Holstein, the biggest one. Why the biggest one? In Colombia is the same, the biggest one. They want the biggest one, the Holstein. Again, it's going to compact the ground. It needs more food, more requirements. So no, but these cows, they are small, they are medium. The requirements are not so many, and they produce like 25 liters of milk. One animal that it's just like this size. It's incredible. It's incredible. Well, here our farmers, the Holstein that should provide 18 liters, it just gives 8 liters, and they are thinking, what they told, and then the farmers think it's because of genetics, but it's because they are not even like giving water to to those cows or salt, and those things are basic, and that's the pillar of this model. These people from New Zealand, they are proactive, they are efficient. The people at the Manuka farm, sorry, they want to keep training. They are multitasking. They want always to learn more. Sometimes people here, they don't see the farmer with good eyes in Latin America. Sometimes the farmer is being seen like the illiterate or the poor person. For example, someone in the Manuka, they were telling us that in New Zealand the farmer is someone respected because he's someone who knows a lot of things, who invests money in research. Terry and Jackie, they showed us a movie from New Zealand when they were showing how is the day to day of a New Zealander. And it was spectacular how they have the time to be, for example, to be at 3 a.m. milking, even if it's snowing, they were just milking the cows. And then Wednesday and Thursday they were going to train rugby. It was something very interesting. I like that part because it's something that we should also tell our farmers. And also sports is great. All sports generates union, friendship. So every person can manage their life, but also they have to be focused on the same path. That's what New Zealand has done. That's why New Zealand it's a power. And the people, they were really tired after working the whole day with cows, but they were still going on to train and to be practicing rugby, and they were celebrating also there. But the next day, the person maybe was a little bit drunk, but was at 3 a.m. there or 5 a.m. with the cows. But they took the time to do that. So it's incredible that here the people, our farmers, they don't have that time, that leisure time. In Manuka, they work 12 days and they rest 3 days. It's a model that's even different. It's a different work model, but they don't just see to that their staff are ready for every day. They also provide soft and hard skills. It is important to understand how people learned differently in different ways. And I saw that it's very different how someone can understand in Spanish and someone can understand better in Quechua. And also that's important to understand the farmer. There's a reason why the farmer is doing what he's doing. Sometimes the organization, despite they want to help them, they go and they want to impose their way of doing things. They're telling like, no, you're wrong, you have to do it this way. That's why some people are suffering, like for example the brown Swiss, they lost many of the animals. Yeah, well, because what happened? Why they were using brown Swiss? Why they were not using, for example, pastures that were adapted there? Maybe we need also some studies to be done there. It should be has to be a model. For example, when we were in those trainings in Chile, and I've seen it here as well with Miranda, they start from the basics. They start teaching the farmer the basics, so he or she understand why this is important, so they can make decisions later. That phrase, I really like it, and that's really what a farmer is. I don't know if you understand. It says, it's it's kind of like divided in so many things, but it's a ninja. I'm sorry. I just wanted. I was not only working, but I also had the opportunity to travel a little bit those days. It was very interesting to know Chile. I didn't know that Chile was going to be that beautiful. People are very nice, very friendly. The south of Chile is spectacular. I recommend you to go there totally. I learned that pitanga is also a dish here. This is what it's called, dish, and in Peru we call it a soccer match, which is interesting. It's a pity that we cannot see all the pictures. I want to thank all these people who made this experience spectacular. The people in Chile, I thought I was friendly, but in the south of Chile they are very, very friendly. They are willing to help you with anything. Those barriers that we still have between Chileans and Peruvians and Colombians, no, that doesn't exist. But Sarate is a former student from here. He also went there. He, at the end, one of his learning was that I understood that there are no barriers. Terry and Jackie, they were there when he said that. It was very nice to that he understood that. Maybe he thought he was gonna be mistreated in Chile, but no, nothing like that. So that was really nice. That that means that we should continue with this friendship. Well, no, just thank you to all the people who were involved, to Claudia, Jorge, to all the people here from Human Resources, always supporting us. We even asked for more classes for in order to get more knowledge, because really this model, if we could adapt it, it would be spectacular help for the Peruvian agriculture and in South America. When I arrived there, the first thing I said was, what do they feed? What do you feed the cows? Because really, you're normally used to use the right grass, the really tall grass, 45 centimeters. In Colombia, even it kind of like bends because it's so tall. When I arrived, the plant was no taller than 20 centimeters, and the cows were there just eating. And when they left, it looked like like someone had cut the grass, kind of like a soccer field. But it's just the agricultural management is just like so precise. It's something that we can teach, that the people can learn. I witnessed that it can be done, but you have to be there next to the farmer, teaching the farmer, understanding the farmer, and step by step the farmer will understand and will change the mentality that when more pasture, that's better, and better quality as well. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Agradecemos.
We thank you, Juan David, for making us being part of his experience. So next, we will have the exposition, Opportunities in Horticulture. For that, we're going to invite Silvia Estrada. She's a specialist in food technologies. She currently works at Plant and Food Research. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for surviving the marathon of presentation. I hope everything was interesting. First of all, I want to say that currently I don't work with Plant and Food Research. I worked until December last year, and now we are working as an independent consultant in Mexico. However, I have all the different relations with Plant and Food Research. My former colleague, Michelle, unfortunately she couldn't come here to present this presentation. But also I'm here, and I hope that I haven't forgotten things because the experience was amazing. What I first have to tell is about the Plant and Food Research is that it is an organism of research and development that supports the industry, particularly the industry that uses marine plants and products. In reality, Plant and Food Research has a tradition that started in I know that it says that it started in 2008, but it really, for practical matters, it has a longer history. It is an organism that receives support from the government. However, it distinguishes because the support of the government maybe represents less than the 40% of the money from Plant and Food Research, and most of the money comes from for example, intellectual property and research projects with the industry. So it's a highly commercial organization. It has around 900 employees in 14 areas in New Zealand. Most of the researchers are in New Zealand in these 14 centers, but also we have representation in Australia and in the US. In Australia we have 3. I'd love to tell you what happens in Australia because I work there. I work there for Plant and Food Research, and it's a model that I think it's unique. What we do is to have collaboration agreements with different universities in Australia. In Brisbane, we have Queensland University of Technology, and through these agreements, we have a really good research group of cultures. In the case of the south of Australia, we also have some scientifics that are working in architecture of trees like almonds, citrus, and they are also based in the University of Adelaide, and they have agreements with the University of Adelaide and also CSIRO, that is the biggest one in Australia. For us, it's not just like establishing laboratories in all the different countries. The idea is to collaborate with institutions that are already established there and established agreements in the areas that are important in each country. In the case of the US, Michelle, she's in charge of the business in America and Latin America, and she's based in, but we also have representation in Washington. We have 5 pillars in Plant and Food Research. Out of these 5 pillars, I don't know if I have a laser here. Out of these 5, the first 4, these 4 are regards to the use of plant as a raw material. For example, the establishment of new varieties. That means of the establishment of varieties to support horticulture. Also, to products are not necessary like food, for example, forage. Well, they are really for food, but it's indirectly. But also, there are plants that they don't have a feeding purpose, that they're used as a raw material for pharmaceutical products. So we have a range of possibilities here. So we have new varieties, we have bioprotection, sustainable production, innovation in foods, and also we have marine technologies. I don't have time to go in detail each by one. However, we're going to see some of them that are fundamental as new varieties. That doesn't mean that, for example, marine technologies is not important. There are more different advances in New Zealand. Areas that are important. So, for example, we have here the kiwi. It's a fundamental product for the New Zealand economy. It represents New Zealand is the first kiwi exporter at global level, and it's the third in production. So if we analyze the size of New Zealand compared to other countries like China, actually, the kiwi comes from China. It's not a small achievement. It's a phenomenal success that New Zealand has in this product. And not only because of the research that they've done in order to develop new varieties, it's also the whole trade chain, the commercial chain that it's been done. The tomatoes, they are also important. Grapes that we have, that it's especially for wine. Then we can talk about which wine is better, like Australia, New Zealand. I really prefer the red wine from Australia and the white one from New Zealand. But the fact is that it's a really strong industry. What we call, like, for example, peaches and those kind of fruits with big seeds. It's also a very important area. Avocados. I'm going to come back later to this part. I'd like to make emphasis that the production of New Zealand of avocado is not that high. It's not that high, but that's not the point. But I think it's the phenomenon or the fundamental platform in advances. It's not in the production, the mass production. It's about the quality production. Products of high value that represent a market that has more benefits sometimes that instead of producing in mass. Potatoes, all the varieties, and New Zealand has also a history of developing new varieties of potatoes. Grains, particularly cereals, and also we have marine products, and the unit of this identifying opportunities for high value products that are processed. Something that we need to here highlight, for example here, better cultivars faster resumes what is plant and food research. That means developing new varieties using sophisticated systems to detect the mechanisms, the molecular mechanisms that allow the extraction of genes that provide the desirable characteristics to the product. It's not only developing varieties that look nice, that maybe they have success in the market, but all the platforms that we've seen since new varieties until like researching what the consumer likes, everything is joined, and the expression genetic in the different varieties that will be favored by the consumer, everything is a value chain. For example, here we have a purple potato. It's called Purple Heart. It's a variety developed by Plant and Food Research. And one of the characteristics of this product is that it has an extraordinary quantity of antioxidants. It looks nice. The chefs love them because they can play with the shape and the color. But it wasn't an easy path to reach and to get this color and the quantity of antioxidants. Bioprotection, that supports the development of new varieties, but also it's an area in itself. As you know, New Zealand is an island. As such, they develop a unique ecosystem with unique varieties. So it's a national pride. For example, the kiwi bird or some varieties of plants. But imagine the protection that they need to have in order to keep their ecosystems in balance and free of plagues and diseases that come from other countries. It's huge. the effort that New Zealand does is huge. And this effort is not only all applies on the borders, it tries to create systems that see the plant, that understand the mechanisms of the plagues or diseases, and try to minimize the use of pesticides and other products that are not necessarily harmful, but the market is not really accepting them. So there we are also adding value to the product, and we're talking about the integral management of plants. That's a very important area in plant and food research, and also the monitoring and the control of diseases. That's linked to the next topic, which is sustainable and profitable production systems. Here we see all the different aspects post-harvest, but also some operations on the field, like the management. But also there are some mathematician models are developed to plan the product, that also sensors that allow to evaluate the quality of the product on the field, and also post-harvest, even when the consumer gets the product and eats it. So all of this is the development post-harvest, and also a little bit of pre-harvest in the idea of using intelligent systems for the management of the product. Innovation in foods, that also something important. So I was telling you, it's not sometimes we think about new variety, we should just like develop it because we think it's going to be good. No, we need to understand what the consumer wants. The consumer now today, it's for example, they want the berries. Somebody mentioned like blueberries. All these type of products, they have a high value in the market because the consumer perceives that those products are going to provide good nutrition facts that he or she doesn't find in other products. So we need to understand what the consumer wants, what's the trend, and based on that we need to develop a strategy to develop a new variety that has the characteristics that the consumer wants. Like I said, it's a whole value chain. Something very important that what is done in this concept of innovation is understand how can we could justify a claim before the authorities. As you can imagine, Peru is the same. For example, if my product helps, so you can clean your kidneys and you can have a better functioning of your metabolism, etc. It's not possible to claim, or you cannot put it on the label until you have fully confirmed that property. So Planet Food, what they do is integrate the known knowledge, detect fails or things that have not been corroborated, and then they help to make a dossier that justifies the claim. For example, like products that have special properties. Marine technologies, I'm not gonna stop much on this part, but it's linked to all the different pillars that we saw before, and that's food innovation. However, there are some new technologies of capture, but we don't have the time, unfortunately. The people who are interested in this part, please send me an email. I can provide you my card, and I can send you the link of the video that shows a special technology that's called Tiaki. It's a capture system that it's more benign than the tracing lines that are being used currently. It's a new way of fishing that maybe that can revolutionize the way of fishing right now in order to increase sustainability of this industry. In impact, well, I could spend hours talking about this topic, but I just want to present some points that I think are important and some examples that are fundamental, have been fundamental for the New Zealand industry. So first is the invasion, the Pseudomonas actinidiae. or the PSA. This was a disease. It it was called PSA. This disease. It killed the vineyards of kiwi when it entered in 2010. There was a huge. It was a huge problem among all the farmers who were producing kiwis, and they were fearing the worst because in the areas where this PSA enter, or like countries, basically the plants die and the production just falls. So immediately Planet Food Research, what they did is they organized a quick response team, and together with CESPRI, which is the organism who is in charge of commercializing the kiwi globally, they formed a team of quick response, and they started doing research about what they didn't know and they did know about this disease, and they started seeing how it was affecting the industry, what areas were being affected, and the chemical and biological responses against this disease. They tried different things. However, the one that was more sustainable was the development of a new variety of kiwi that is called sun gold. I don't know if you have that kiwi fruit from New Zealand. Have you received the green, the golden kiwi? If you have seen it, the most popular one, it was the Hayworth kiwi. It was the green one. Then there's like a yellow type that it's called Sun. Sun was the one that was the most affected by the PSI. So it was a new variety was developed. It was called Sun Gold, and this variety is resistant. It's PSI resistant. It's more resistant than the other varieties. So all this research was done in 3 years. Only 3 years. That for a genetic program, that's a record. So basically, with this new variety, the kiwi industry continues in New Zealand. It's still strong. It had like reduction because of this disease, but now it's back on track. So that shows the big commercial impact that researchers can be done. How they help to surpass terrible problems like this. We have other examples like the use of pheromones for the management of plagues. This is an example of the avocado. It was the detention of a load coming from New Zealand, coming from New Zealand to in the US, because that container had signs of a scab. This is a defect that is shown in avocados, but New Zealand is free of that microorganism. When they stop, that contain the New Zealand producers, they couldn't believe it because they couldn't believe that they had the scab. It was not detected in New Zealand or in the farm, so they started doing some research, started collecting some samples, and then Planet Food Research, they confirmed in only 5 days from, and in 5 days they obtained all the different proofs that it was not that disease. It's not just like what the value of the load, it's just so that the frontiers from the US would have closed for New Zealand avocados. So those are important impacts. This is an example that later I'm gonna talk a little bit more. This is basically, in Mexico we call the potato. It's called in English TPP, mix it with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It is called the tomato potato peeling. This is an insect it's an insect for Beribacter. That's what it provokes the seroshik. So So in New Zealand, this organism showed in 2006 when it showed they didn't have any precedence of this insect in New Zealand. So it was controlled, but 2 years later, then there was like the expression of diseases that were related with this insect. But it was not only presented in potatoes, but also in tomatoes, in capsicum as well. Also, another product that we it's a different kind of tomato. It's also another kind of fruit, the tamarillo. What happened is that we started to see, like the effects of this insect. Then the tamarillo industry, it was falling due to this insect. So the industry was falling, and the other industry was fearing all the different varieties from protected products were also scared. So what Planet Food, what they do is they get together a quick response team, and they manage to control and in a way to avoid the impact of the insect and also the Helicobacter. Also, something like that happened in Australia last year. In Australia, there was the first incursion of this insect, and they couldn't control it. So teams from New Zealand went there to help Australia. But it's inevitable that the expansion is going to be done in other states outside the original state that was Western Australia. Following the New Zealand experience, so we hope that the expressions Helicobacter can be expressed in other places. Maybe there are going to be products that cannot be sold. Those are unavoidable impacts. But if we don't have those quick responses, then markets can be closed, and productions are going to close them as well, and vital products as well. These are some of the companies that we work with. So you can identify Cespri, which is one of the main collaborators with Planet Food Research. But also you can see that we can also work with Turners and Growers. I think Cespri is maybe like 3 times bigger than Turners and Growers. But Turners and Growers internationally, they're one of the strongest fruit companies in the world. We work with many others as well. The reason is like that we have a commercialization system of intellectual property, so they understand that what we are delivering them, it's unique, and we're not gonna share it with other people. We share confidentiality, we respect of the collaborators, and we understand the mechanisms to use the intellectual property in a good way, and that also that they need to contribute back to Planet Food Research to continue research. So I think that's one of the main characteristics of the plant. As you see, we have projects everywhere in the world. I'd say that in Peru, the main projects are these ones. Is the International Center of the Potato. There are some research agreements that they want to identify the phenotypes of certain varieties and certain characteristics that are desirable in different varieties of potatoes. That's basically what we are doing with the SIP. But also we have this other project that I think since 2011 to 2014, and it was a project to understand the loss of post-harvest of the Hass avocado. It was a very interesting topic because it was a collaboration with associated farmers with us, but also with other farmers that were not associated with us. So what we had from this project, it was we covered different areas here in Peru. I am glad that despite being, Mexican, and and we know that Mexico is the #1 producer. I'm really happy that Peru is reaching a really good exporting level, and maybe I don't know if they have surpassed Mexico's already. So that indicates the good potential of Peru to develop this particular product. So we have a number of opportunities that Michelle expressed. Sustainable production, development of products with high nutrition and also with high value in the market, improvement of the productivity, and also the control of plagues. I go back again to this phenomenon. I don't know if it's a problem in Peru. Do you have it, the problem here in Peru? Or the stained potato? Or we don't know. Maybe you have it. What happens here in this particular area is to establish methods to control and verify that actually, for example, a potato that has these stains, maybe it's another defect or maybe it is this. So just the idea is to establish a system to identify the existence of Bacteria bactil. How am I with time? Do I still have time? Just to finish, so we can start questions. Michelle is your contact for plant food research. As I was telling you, she's working in Davis. If it's difficult to contact her, please contact me. This is my contact details, and I'll be happy to guide you and maybe to guide you with your questions. I just want to finish with this topic. Horticulture is a sector that many people don't pay much attention because it's a complex topic. There are different varieties of products that we have to work with and we have to see them differently. However, it is one of the sectors that has more economical benefits for the countries that take horticulture serious. I can tell you that profitability of these kind of companies it's quite high, both in New Zealand and in Australia. So I'd like to see more efforts in this area, especially in Peru, in Latin American countries in general, Colombia, countries that have a good reserve of grounds and water that have not been exploited yet, particularly in species of high value. And I already mentioned the berries, but not only those. It's a fact that the consumer in the world is looking for vegetable products. So it's an excellent product opportunity. So I hope you take advantage of it. And well, if you have any question, let me know.
¿Alguna pregunta por ahí?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Agradecemos a la doctora.
We thank the Dr. Silvia Estrada. So now we inform you that now we will have the exposition, the integration of the chains that will be in charge of Ryan Donovan. This will be a live transmission. Because of that, we want you to ask for some patience while we are accommodating all this equipment. At the same time, the people who didn't have the headsets, please go and ask for them. also turn off the equipment.
La presentación del doctor Ryan Donovan.
The presentation of Ryan Donovan, he's from the Ministry of Primary Industries. It's already in the folders that it's been already handed out. If you would like to revise it, you can do it. Okay, so I'd like to invite, please, the expositor so they can come here to the table. I request the hostesses to help us with the chairs, please, since we had to reform the...
Entonces, creo que podemos ubicar las sillas. Por favor, el doctor Gómez, por favor, para que pueda el doctor Lipún. Sí, ponla todas en la mesa de donación. No, sí, primero pongamos la mesa, primero pongamos las sillas. Sí. Los expositores. Doctora Silvia, por favor. Creo que sí, vamos a ver. ¿En cualquier lugar? Sí, por favor, sí. Ubíquense como se sientan cómodos. Sí, esto. Aquí te doy uno. Esto lo paso. Ahí tienes otro.
So we have all the expositors here, so you can pose the different questions. Also, the hostesses will have the microphone, so you can pose your question.
Muy bien. ¿Quién desea hacer?
So who would like to pose the first question so the hostesses can go and provide the microphone?
Gracias. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. First, I wanted to greet you. I'm coming in the representation of Miranda Pacay and congratulate you for all these initiatives that are being developed. We are convinced that it's always good to articulate because that's how we can achieve big things. We, as part of our work of social responsibility, we have different development projects in livestock and also in dairy. Especially in dairy, many deal with pastures, with basins, with irrigation. And thank you for all the presentations because it helps us to strengthen our programs. And I was really happy to see that the dairy matter is articulated in our area. Also, we have a good plan that has a HACCP also, and in Espinar, that it's in a location in Cusco. above the 4,000 meters above sea level, that even higher than Puno, it is very it's gratifying to see that the livestock has grown in not so many years. For example, the dairy plant now it has more. It has a good production of milk. So Espinar, despite the geographical condition, it's a dairy basin. So I was also really happy that this program is also in Espinar, because in the first presentation, Espinar was there as one of the places from the project. So that's where my question goes: how is the program? How the program has? What did the program do to select some areas to be part of this great plan of strengthening of capabilities of the chain? I wanted to know who do you articulate from the area, if you're articulating with someone from the local government, directly with the community. I would like to understand more about that articulation. And in the same line, that it is always better to articulate and get together more efforts instead of repeating them or just leaving them. It is better to get them together. I just wanted to know if this selection of communities of this area of action is already closed, or maybe it's open, so maybe we can include more people and we can work together maybe with other programs with more communities. That's my question. Thank you. Well, yes, we do have a pilot in Espinar. The process of identification of the organizations, of the pilot organizations, already finished. Well, the way of working in the project is they have to be sustainable in time during the intervention, that it's 4 years, but in the identified whole farm, because we know that we need continuity so we can show changes, because those changes are going to be able to replicate in other communities, changes that have to be permanent in the livestock management. During those 4 years, communities like neighboring communities can participate, because they're going to be open days. And the farmers, they're going to show the advances that they have obtained during this whole process. They also will have to start to tell the different problems that they faced. So the fact that other communities, organizations from farmers, they are not considered as pilot, it has a reason, but it doesn't mean that they are not going to be benefited by this, because what they want to show with the pilots is the results. Only with results we will be able to generate change. Always in the sense of getting together, we should not forget that we need just like to sum up with the efforts that we're doing right now, but also with the previous experience that happened in the Andes area. For many years, we've been working in Puno with a series of NGOs, with universities, in a project that it was called Altagro, that it was implemented by CIRMA, the Center of Research of Natural Resources and Environment, that it is an NGO that it's in Puno, and the International Center of the Potato, that it's just here. And that in that project we were working, understanding also what the farmers needed, and we worked in community organizations and in the organization of the different chains. And for example, the quinoa chain, the alpaca chain, the dairy chain, and also the trout chain. So through this project, we achieved many important achievements and results. And this project was a winner of 3 international awards. It it won an award from the International Bank as one of the most innovative projects in 2004. It also won an award from Fontagro last year, because it was one of the most innovative projects that was implemented with small farmers. In the specific case of the dairy project, what it was done is to group the different farmers or dairy producers to work together so they could provide milk to small cheese processing areas. So in these small cheese industries, they started producing cheese not only for Puno, but they also produced for later for Cusco and other parts of the country. Only just with this organization, the organization of these dairy farmers, a better management of pastures, and the commercialization through cheeses, we were able to increase 10 times the incomes of the small dairy farmers. We did something similar with quinoa, but quinoa to export for European markets, Asian markets, for American markets, and also the income increased 10 times thanks to the articulation of the chains, of the quinoa chains. In trout, it happened the same. We are exporting trouts that were, and they're being exported to Canada, the US, Germany, and Switzerland. So there are many examples of initiatives that they have been done for many years in the Andes area, where it is worth it to be in contact with these institutions that executed these projects and that have benefited to thousands of families and farmers. So we need to also think about how to get together with the initiatives that are being developed, but also to initiatives that already finished, but very valuable experience were generated, and also that have been valued in a scientific way. So in order to avoid that, it's just like just a one-time experience. There's a lot of science there that it's been used in the development of those projects, that they have been very well applied. And maybe I can contribute a little bit. In the case of the project, in each region we have the regional groups, the technical groups, where participate all the different institutions from the state, from the sector, also NGOs, universities, etc., even livestock leaders. When we started the projects, they get together every 2 months. Right now, they are a little bit more relaxed because probably because of this change of authorities, it influences them, the mood of continuing being active. So that's where the different opportunities, the risks, and the synergies are discussed that we have to do in the sector. Good afternoon. I'd like to ask the following question. In the different expositions, you've talked about different points that I thought that were quite important. For example, the national policies. If we talk about national policies, probably we will have to take into account, we'll pay attention to the food safety. Dr. Sylvia, she mentioned about the economic value that we have to take that into account. Dr. Gomez also talked about that there's also a nutritional value that has to be very important to talk about in these kind of events. Dr. Hugo talked about the science and innovation based on science. But I understood the message that we need to take into account the systems, the production systems. So this takes me to the next questions. In the poor Andean systems, only exists the alpacas and the llamas. The great pastures that we've seen, for example, in the different expositions, but they are not in the mountains. So from the point of view of what is the scientific support? Is there evidence that the fatty acids, like the omega-3, in the content level, the alpacas and llamas, they are superior to the ovines and the bovines. So we don't have one alpaca that produces milk. That's a disadvantage. But that's where my question goes. From a nutritional point of view, is there any references that, for example, the red clover are the ones that promote that the alpaca or maybe other animals can have more fatty acids? So my question is, is that true about this? So if we give the added value to the meat of llamas or alpacas with this component of fatty acids, maybe maybe we could fight the poverty that is in these parts of the Andes. That was like a question. Yes, that was my question. That's a very interesting point, and I think there are very many examples in the region of New Zealand and in Australia, because I was 16, 17 years working with the Australian industry. I'm going to give you an example that is similar, and it's something that is called in bush food in Australia. It's basically species and other products that are native from Australia, but it's a very difficult industry because there's no continuity. Bush food has an image that is also indigenous, because those are basically foods that were discovered and used for many years by the Aboriginal population from Australia. The way how they are trying to promote this kind of food is not just like thinking about the antioxidants in these foods that they have, and there are some products that have like high quantities of antioxidants, but having a good nutritional value is not enough today. I think that now it's a matter of the matter of concept of provenance. It's just, what can the food provide me as a functional food or maybe traditional, but also the history of the food. For example, in New Zealand, there's a really good example of a cooperative, a Maori cooperative, that also has adopted that provenance model, and they started in a website when they were starting to sell Maori products from with the history of that product, because the consumer it falls in love with the product. So it's a story that they have to tell, despite the nutritional factors. In the case of alpaca, I think there's the story behind that we haven't been able to take advantage of. So, and maybe that together with the nutritional factor, I think there's an angle, a marketing angle that we have to explore a little bit more. So that's my opinion. As in the case of Australia, here we have cases where maybe 30 or 35 years ago, we didn't know the native products in the capital markets or international markets. It is the case, for example, of the quinoa. The quinoa, if you remember, maybe 30 or 35 years ago, the people who can remember that, the quinoa was eaten only in the communities in the Andes, but it didn't reach our markets here in the capital. Thanks to the work done in a constant way, in persistent way, we were able to conquer the international markets. Now, I think you cannot find, there's no supermarket that doesn't have quinoa, or maybe a product that is derived from quinoa or processed products from quinoa. like cereals, and it's been something in trend right now with a great international market. In the case of the native potato, maybe 20 years ago, it was not known, not even in the national markets, and of course in international markets. And it was a persistent work in the International Center of Potato to rescue the biodiversity, to work on the value chain of the potato, to reach the supermarkets, to reach to the Novo-Andean cuisine, to take advantage of the gastronomical boom that happened in Peru in the last years, in order to promote the use of this potato. And now these native potatoes that were not known, in Lima, for example, now they are being consumed at international level. Who hasn't seen, these colorful potatoes that, for example, even in Frito-Lay are processing them? They are huge, producers of snacks, and now these native potatoes, they are being commercialized. In these cases, there was no market for this native potato, but the market was developed, and the market was developed not only because of this persistent and scientific work that was done. Starting with the International Potato Center, associating with indigenous farmers communities, with NGOs, with the processors, with the also it was the work from the government, because sometimes we don't recognize the work that is done by the governments. But for example, the government also declared a day that it was a day of the potato. And that helped a lot for the potato market. The potato consumption increased from 55 kilos to more than 70 kilos per person per year. So we started to recover a market that was there from so many years, but it was not there for certain types of potatoes. It was not for the native potatoes. In the case of the alpaca, there's no doubt that there's a huge market for the alpaca fiber. We cannot deny that. It's interesting in the case of the alpaca fiber is that also we've been working with farmer communities. So these products are not sold in the local markets only, so they can reach the export markets. And for that, we need to train people. We need to design also to design abilities. And also in the case of the alpaca meat, we've also started to see in the national markets and also in international markets. For me, it was a great surprise maybe 10 years ago when I was in a Lufthansa flight. It was from Frankfurt, Lima, and they served alpaca on the flight. So the people recognized the value of the alpaca meat. And also, they know that it is a natural product, but as Sylvia was saying, we have to develop the market for it. It's not that the market is the one that wants the product and increases the production. No, it's not always. It is also the development of the market for certain products that, for example, it's the case of native products. We have to develop a market. In the case of Peru, that happens a lot because of our gastronomical boom. For example, like Gastón Acurio, the famous Peruvian chef, has played an important role in promoting Peruvian food, and something that maybe some years ago seemed like a utopia, that Peru was going to be a gastronomical kingdom, when there were going to be like tourists that came here just for the food. So now you can be sure that that's the reality. Peruvian food is acknowledged in the world. If you can see, in the ranking of the best 50 restaurants, there are 3 or 4 that are from Peru. And now there are many tourists. I've met many people that come here from the US or from Europe, and they tell us like, yeah, what I want to do is, we want to go to these famous restaurants. And in these famous restaurants, they promote these native products like alpaca, like the guinea pig, also the quinoa, the native potatoes, kiwicha, etc.
Gracias.
Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations to the organizers and especially to the speakers. I'm just going to comment a little bit about horticulture. In refer to the tuna, the fruit tuna, or the cactus fruit, and the exposition of Sylvia Estrada in Santo Domingo, which is a district in the south of Lima, between Chilca and Punta Hermosa. It reaches 3,000 meters above sea level. Around 2,000 hectares of tuna or cacti fruit is cultivated, and with that volume and space there are problems with plagues. That is why, having this volume, why are we cultivating tuna? Because in this area we don't have water, natural. So, because with some, reservoirs that we're having, but the topic of plagues, maybe if you have it, well, my question to, Dr. Sylvia is, maybe you've studied in some areas, maybe it can be replicated in Santo Domingo de Hieros, or maybe it could be a point of study to widen the project that you have. That's one question. That's a very interesting question, also for Mexico, because as you know, Mexico has produced tuna or prickly pear cactus for 100 years. However, we're still discovering in Mexico what are the properties of these products. For example, the prickly pear cactus, the red one, has amazing quantities of antioxidants, but also the cactus, the leaves of the cactus has good properties for the insulin in blood. It has also diet fiber, and so right now we have supplements that being sold with these properties. But the geographical situation of Peru, they might have given other properties to these prickly pear cactus fruits, and it would be interesting to analyze what are these properties and the marketing angle that we can manage according to that product, because every region is different, and the different products that are produced in different regions, they can have different and significant properties in the composition and the nutritional factors. So that would be a very interesting project. Good afternoon. Really congratulations for talking about problems in the agriculture that are very important. I think that last year I was in farmers' communities in Otusco, close to Trujillo, really good roads. In 45 minutes from Trujillo, a city, we could reach Otusco. And I worked in the agricultural sector almost my whole life. What I see is that the areas in the Andes, even when they are not in high altitude, they still have really poor production. I think that maybe if they are isolated initiatives, in a certain way contribute in something. But here what we lack, and that happened many years, it's national policies. That we need to have extension institutions that they have to aimed at and seeing how we can solve different kinds of problems. Here the situation hasn't improved for the rural farmers. I hear that the alpaca farmers, they can reach some advancement in regards to the fiber, but really the situation of the alpaca farmer, of also the milk producer, is they're still in poverty. This is just a comment, so we can be able to think about that here the state is not an agricultural state, although we have amazing resources, and I think that maybe we have to see the problem from that side. So great part of the resources, they can go to universities or to organizations, but I think there are some isolated matters that, and one thing is to do some policy, to make some policies. I am a veterinary. 50 years ago, we had the problem of the dystomatosis in the bovine that affects the liver, not only in animals, but also in people. We go to the same places, and that disease and the prevalence, it's even more. But it doesn't attack not only to animals, but also people. So this is alarming. Maybe we have to focus over there. It's just like a comment, and thank you very much for listening.
I can't comment on the policies in Peru, but I can comment on how important extension has been in New Zealand. We focus on extension very much to build farmer capability.
A levantar para crear la capacidad de los productores.
And we find mass extension a very cost-effective way to build farmer capability.
Y sabemos que la extensión en masa es muy importante y costo efectivo para levantar la capacidad de los productores.
I have begun an extension program with the project in Colombia.
Yo inicié un proyecto de extensión con productores en Colombia.
And we have had a very positive response from the farmers and implementation on farm.
Y hemos tenido una respuesta muy interesante, muy importante a este sistema de extensión masiva en Colombia.
So I totally agree with your comments around extension being important.
Entonces estoy muy de acuerdo con tus comentarios sobre la extensión para el desarrollo de la agricultura en general.
Just following, perdón.
Just following what Miranda was saying, I think that coming from Latin American countries like Mexico, Peru, or Colombia, it is necessary to point out that the deficiencies in policies, but it's also important to see farther than the regulatory system and to see what efforts we can do with the industry, with the private initiative. I think that this was essential in countries like Australia, New Zealand, and now like in Asia, in which they wanted to create clusters where they involved academics, the private initiatives, and also the private initiatives started providing funds to develop the industry itself, like innovation projects. Maybe we need to see also how we can involve the industry to our projects. Maybe I know that sometimes this is not well received by some academic areas. I understand that, but on the other side, we also have a function, and I include myself because I'm also an academic. I'm an academic. There's a function for us, and it's to involve the industry so they can start taking responsibility from the innovation projects that they're doing for them. So we need to find those mechanisms that can be clusters, that can be in exchange programs, education programs, extension programs. But there are other mechanisms where not only they are not necessary where policies are not going to limit us. That's my comment. Good afternoon. I wanted to ask a question to Dr. Hunter. And this morning we saw the fluctuation of the prices of the milk powder. So I wanted to ask you, when there is a crisis point, when the price drops, what are the mechanisms that New Zealand takes in order to define the strategy or the policies to surpass that crisis and maybe to make it more sustainable, in order to improve the mechanisms to surpass that crisis. I would like to understand how the system operates inside New Zealand in relation to the public-private relation and also in the relation between industry and producers.
Mass extension events to work with farmers in terms of building their capability to work through those situations.
Entonces, bajo esas situaciones, la industria va a trabajar usando los mecanismos de extensión masiva para afrontar esos escenarios.
And also through government programs, through research, they may bring forward some options to help us as well. And again, that will come through mass extension through to farmers.
Y también a través del gobierno, que también en última instancia van a involucrar programas de extensión masiva.
What does not happen is that farmers are underpinned by government subsidies.
Lo que no ocurre es que los productores van a ser aliviados por subsidios del gobierno.
So they have to work through it as businesses.
Entonces tienen que trabajar ellos mismos como negocio, por sí mismos, afrontar por sí mismos el problema.
Good afternoon. My question is in the case of New Zealand to Dr. Miranda and also to the doctor from Mexico. If in your country there is a norm that regulates the use of the pastures, and if there is, how is it working? Because, for example, in our country, it doesn't exist. And if we're talking about ecosystems of high altitude, those are very fragile ecosystems. So despite the potential that the pastures might have, the overexploitation always exists. So that is why the profitability is low. That's a comment as well.
In terms of environmental regulation,
En términos de regulación medioambiental,
yes, farmers are regulated in terms of what pollutants they can release to the environment.
están controlados en términos de qué nutrientes pueden liberar al medio ambiente.
In Europe, they've chosen systems which are based on inputs for that regulation.
Se ha elegido en lo que es entradas.
Whereas in New Zealand, it is an output-based system, and I will explain that.
Perdón. Que son salidas de esos nutrientes.
So we have a model called Overseer.
Hay un modelo que se usa en Nueva Zelanda, también en Australia, que se llama Overseer.
And a farmer's farm system is run through that model.
Entonces los productores usan ese modelo en sus sistemas de finca.
And that identifies the nutrient loss that comes from that farm.
Entonces pueden identificar el balance de nutrientes en su finca.
So the farmer has to stay within the limits of that nutrient loss.
Entonces los productores tienen que estar dentro del límite de esa pérdida de nutrientes de la finca.
But they determine how they're going to do that. So we're not regulating them on an input-based system.
Entonces ellos tienen que trabajar en controlarse dentro de esos límites, porque ellos no están regulados en términos de cuánto pueden poner en la finca, sino en cuánto pueden liberar liberar.
The only other constrictions we have around feeding is the maximum volume of palm kernel extract that we would be able to feed on our farms.
Hay una regulación que los limita el uso de, no sé cómo se llama, sí.
Grano.
Palm kernel, Carlos. El uso es un residuo del aceite de palma que se usa en ganadería. O sea, los ganaderos pueden usar hasta cierto límite ese producto si necesitan suplementar.
Because that can alter the compositions of the fats in the milk.
Porque ese producto puede alterar la composición de la leche.
And New Zealand markets itself as a predominantly grass-based pasture system.
Esto es porque hay que tener cuidado que el mercado internacional de la leche para Nueva Zelanda es fundamentalmente basado en pasturas.
Bueno, en México hay regulaciones, tenemos una Secretaría del Medio Ambiente que se encarga de regular los desechos de todo tipo de industria, incluida agricultura.
Including agriculture. The problem is also the monitoring, because there is no capability to monitor all the different, waste areas that we have in Mexico. So there's there's no compliance in Mexico, and it's quite strong because we haven't found a solution to the problem of the monitoring. We cannot monitor. Up to now, we don't have the capability to monitor all the waste sources, and I don't think we're going to have it one day. We need to be smarter in the sense that how we are going to control and monitor this waste. But up to now, we haven't found a way to solve that problem. Thank you. Maybe another question? Good afternoon. It was very interesting, all the expositions. What caught my attention was that you talked about the kiwi, the green and also the yellow kiwi. It was attacked by this insect. In what way? Because it caught my attention because in 3 years you were able to change to a new variety, and maybe if the organoleptic characteristics of this product, of this kiwi, were the same, because in such a short time to be able, it really surprises me. If you could explain a little bit more. Yes, I know it seems amazing. It was 3 years of development. We had as a precedent the previous version, the variety version that was susceptible to the TPP. So in that variety, which is the gold, the kiwi gold, we already knew the organoleptic characteristics that that product had, and we knew that it was accepted by the consumer. So we already had we already saw what the consumer wanted. We understood that we needed to preserve the flavor, the acidity, the organoleptic characteristics of the product. The only that we needed to do is to look for a way to turn the gene that it was making susceptible to the TPP. Sorry, it was not TPP. So many bacteria, I forgot the name. To the Pseudomonas. Yeah. So we look how to turn off that gene, and that's how we produce the new sun gold variety. So it didn't start from zero. The green kiwi, which is the Hayworth, it was developed first, also by Plant and Food. So we had that development as a previous step, and then we developed the gold that it was susceptible, and then we developed sun gold that was not susceptible but conserved the organoleptic characteristics, and it was accepted by the consumer. So it seemed that everything was done in 3 years, but reality, they were using all the previous work from this development of different varieties for Sespri since, I think, since the year 2000 or maybe before. So something I forgot to mention during my presentation was that Plant and Food, they have a germplasm bank that it's extensive for the production of more importance for New Zealand. So we use that bank, and also modern technical like Cas9 to detect what are the molecular mechanisms that originate genetic expressions that we want to turn off or to preserve. So it's a whole management of genetics also to develop a variety in such a short time. So that's why they have this idea that better diet is faster. It's not just like creating new varieties or improving new varieties, but also to make them faster. So that combination of science and technology that has Plant and Food is what allowed to do that. Yeah. Was it clear? Another question. Sorry, excuse me. The comment that made Sylvia makes me wonder something. Many times we don't recognize the value of what the banks of genetic resources have. If we, for example, we cross the road and we go to the International Potato Center, they have impressive collections of potatoes, of sweet potatoes, kumara, and also Andean tubercles. So do you have an idea how much does it cost to preserve those genetic resources? It's about $2 million a year to preserve all these resources, because also we need to keep a collection, also a replica of this collection in another country. And unfortunately, many, not even our countries or the organizations that are providing support to this research are conscious, are aware of the value that these germplasm banks have. The day that, for example, disease shows up, people can quickly respond because they have kept the plasma for so many years, and also because they've been doing researches to characterize that, to develop varieties, and then when the problem shows up, they have a solution that could be relatively fast. But if we don't have these banks, we wouldn't have research that it's supported in a continuous way, maybe just by the government, by alliances with the private industry. We wouldn't have then later the elements to respond before emergencies. And we're always, trying to help, these problems. But if we wouldn't have like sustainable research programs, we could respond faster. That's why in the morning I was talking about that the countries that really have reached development are the countries who have invested in education, science, and technology. If you don't invest in these three sectors, it's going to be really difficult that our countries will develop. So we were talking that the countries, they had to be at least 1% of their GDP, the agricultural GDP had to go to I&D. But these countries, they are investing 2, 3, 4% of the agricultural GDP. So this is the idea of the gap that we have, and then we have to solve. Really, I made a comment, very positive comment about the policies that were made in the last government when we negotiated the establishment of the EPINIA. We negotiated to give more resources for Concitec, for scholarships. But this has to be sustainable in time. You just cannot make something really fast, build a building on one day. You need to have policies at long term. It has to be national policies, not a government policy, because the government can change, but the state decides that they need to invest in education, science and technology, because that is a strategy for development. And I think that we need to keep those strategies and those state policies. Just a final comment. Because of the richness of the germplasm that we have in the International Potato Center, it's something really important for the country. Just a comment. Good afternoon. Well, first I want to thank you for the invitation and the brilliant expositions of the speakers. Thank you also to the Embassy of New Zealand for the support. I'm going to participate with a species that maybe it's not like livestock, it's the bees. The bees that are maybe linked also to the food safety and also to the production of products from agriculture, and also they are associated to health. And so New Zealand is famous for its Manuka honey. It's acknowledged because of the quality and also because of the price. And I think that Peru, we could also have a similar honey like the Manuka because of the great variety that we have in medicinal plants. That is why my question is, in what way we could allow that maybe New Zealand can expand the support to Peru in the bee sector and the apiculture sector. And the second question is in the sense of how New Zealand is taking advantage of the new technologies for the training, technical training, because in Peru it's quite diverse and we have different ecosystems, and the guides of communication, the communication here, it's really difficult. It's very difficult, for example, to reach some towns in the Andes. And also on the other side, the state doesn't have a good agricultural development policy. So they don't have very well implemented the training part. We, for example, as beekeepers, we're talking with other institutions to start a pilot project so we can reach the rural areas through video conferencing or maybe courses that we can use by using the technologies. So how is New Zealand using these technologies for that training? Apicultura.
But from a training point of view in the dairy industry,
Pero desde el punto de vista de entrenamiento que tienen la industria lechera,
what we have is a very well-developed vocational training system.
dice que tienen un entrenamiento vacacional, un sistema de entrenamiento vacacional.
So what that is a national structure that has a strong framework.
Dice que hay una estructura nacional muy fuerte.
That has protocol standards and measurements.
Que tiene protocolos estándar y mediciones.
And the tutors are all part-time and live locally to their areas.
Dice que, can you repeat?
The tutors are all part-time and they're spread out throughout New Zealand. Teachers.
Dice que los can you repeat this?
Los que entrenan están dispersos en el país. Sí.
Yeah. So that means that's the way we get past areas being very remote.
Dice que así alcanzan a los lugares bastante remotos.
So typically those students come to a class once every month, once every 6 weeks.
Vienen a clase una vez al mes, por ejemplo.
And they meet with the tutor within an hour or 2 hour, drive from their local area.
Entonces pueden reunirse con los tutores a 1 hora, 2 horas de conducir de sus centros de origen.
So in between times they're supported with material resources and in some cases social media platforms.
Okay, entonces durante todo ese periodo pueden estar soportados a través de materiales escritos, boletines, inclusive en la media, en internet, por ejemplo.
So like you, we have distance and location issues.
Entonces, como aquí nosotros también tenemos problemas de distancias y localidades remotas.
So New Zealand may not be a very large country, but our population is small, so some of our communities are quite remote.
Aunque Nueva Zelanda es un país pequeño, nuestra población también es pequeña, entonces podremos también ser comparable en la localización remota de los usuarios.
But the thing I need to emphasise is the formality around the vocational training system, so the students are taught to standard.
Entonces, el sistema de entrenamiento vacacional, que hay un sistema estándar para ellos.
Okay, gracias.
El caso de la Manuka es
The case of the Manuka is one of the most successful business stories from New Zealand, but it's also a very complex case. In the case of defending the brand, which is Manuka, and right now there's a conflict with Australia because of the use of Manuka as a trademark in Australia, and in New Zealand has. Right now there's like some trials that are defending the right of New Zealand to preserve the Manuka as a trademark for New Zealand only. The success of this product was not only the product itself, but also the whole marketing around the product. I think one of the most intelligent things that it was done in this campaign was to make kind of like a UMF, kind of a pharmaceutical grade when they graduate the quality of the product in these grades that are basically, I'm not going to say that created, those are arbitrary really. However, it was a very intelligent move, because what happens is that the consumer perceives as the Manuka honey as sub-products as almost as a pharmaceutical product. So taking complexities aside from, from the trademarks and all these things, the technology of Manuka is basically the Manuka that can be used for any other kind of honey. So the question is like, maybe other producers, maybe in Australia or maybe in Peru or in maybe another country, what is the angle that differentiates my product from yours? And it's not only because it's Manuka, maybe should be another angle, because Manuka, it's already being exported. So that market, it's already gone. So what does our product has that is different? The Peruvian that gives an added value over the other varieties that are outside. So in that sense, the technology transfer, it's really easy, because the same that they are doing with Manuka, you can do it for the products here. The idea is how to do it. So we don't, what is happening in Australia, that it's not Manuka, but it has this angle that is different, so we need to do a campaign around this. So to make it unique, that's what I'm talking about. In the question that Jorge was posing in regards to what other mechanisms we can use to the transfer of technology for, something that surprises me is that in Latin America there are not many experiences in the use of IT technologies or communication technologies for the extension and for the transfer of technology. There is much more experience in Africa or in Asia than in Latin America. I don't know because if it is maybe a matter that the tradition in regards to what methods it's being used for the extension or the transfer, they don't take into account the great revolution of the use of the mobiles, the smartphones. So right now, we cannot imagine that someone doesn't have access to a mobile. So I think that because since we have this huge revolution in communications, our extension services and transfer and technology transfer, they are not meeting the levels of this development of, for example, smartphones and mobiles. I think it will be great if we can develop projects in this area, because imagine someone has a problem, a technological problem, or maybe a health problem, or maybe with the plants or the animals, and maybe he would just need to take a picture, could send it to a center when they will analyze it, and they'll provide information, and they will tell the person what is the diagnosis and what the treatment is. Can you imagine how efficient would that be in terms of costs and also of readiness? So these systems are being implemented in other parts of the world. In the US, there are systems, extension systems. In Africa and in Asia, they are already experimented at a massive level, the use of these technologies for the extension programs. Why are we not replicating those here? In Peru, some people would say, well, in some parts we don't get the signal, or in some parts we don't have access to internet. But in many areas, there's signal and internet access. So I think that will be a great investment that we could do in a pilot project where we could try the use of the TICs in order to strengthen the transfer of technology. And also, we know that they need to be strengthened. Last question, Dr. Chavez. Thank you for giving me the last question. My question is quite simple. Within the dairy industry in New Zealand, it's allowed the growth hormone?
No, farmers do not use the growth hormone in New Zealand. They have their cows calving every year, so some of the products that are used in other countries are not needed to keep the cows in lactation.
Las vacas paren cada año y no hay necesidad de usar ninguna hormona como en el caso de otros países.
There is some growth hormone used in the beef industry.
Dice que hay algún uso de hormonas de crecimiento en la industria de carnes.
That is very tightly controlled, monitored with very strict protocols.
Pero dice que es controlado bien eficientemente con regulaciones bastante estrictas.
It is not widely used even in the beef industry.
Incluso en la industria de carnes su uso no es muy de alto, no es significante.
New Zealanders are very emotional about food being as natural as possible.
Dice, los neozelandeses son bastante emocionales en hacer que el alimento que se produce sea lo más natural como posible que sea.
And they do not agree with many modifications.
Ellos no están de acuerdo con productos, o sea, que se manipulen la producción de manipulación artificial en la producción de alimentos.
Gracias.
Muy bien.
If there is no more questions, then please give a big applause to our speakers. And we invite you to come to the first row. Please sit in the front row.
Sí, sí, sí. sacar eso.
That's a very good moment for as well. But it's emotional.
We're about to finish this workshop. We would like to make an acknowledgement to Dr. Herbert Young Crosby in honor to the agricultural merit. That is why, please, Dr. Mariasa, please come here in the table, also to the Ambassador Jackie Kane, to the Mr. Advisor, Agricultural Advisor Terry Michael, and the Chief of International Affairs, and obviously the Dr. Young Crosby.
Por favor. Vamos.
We're going to invite Ambassador Jackie Kane, who will tell some words, and she will provide the acknowledgement to Dr. Young. Please, Ambassador. Well, we're thinking that this is an excellent opportunity to acknowledge and also give a big thank you for all the work and the contribution that Herbert Young has done in the bilateral relations between New Zealand and Peru. Especially now that we are in La Molina, at the alma mater of Herbert Young, and also in front of so many of his colleagues. I think that Herbert has had a special commitment in our bilateral relations, and for us it is marvelous that we have a person who is so committed and who has achieved so much in his field, also in the bilateral relations. In that work as a diplomat, in our work of diplomat, we have the great honor to meet many people with different histories, different careers. And Herbert is one of those people that from the minute that you meet him, that you know that he's a person with a great vision. Probably he learned things today, but I'm sure that many things that he's heard today, he's already telling people for the past 40 years. So, but for me, it was a great honor to be in his presence and to be here with the ambassador and the vice chancellor. And we want it's an honor to present his an acknowledgement for the work that he has done for our countries. So there's going to be a present for Dr. Herbert Young Crosby. It's here it's a diploma and also a special gift. Maybe if you can be in front of the table for the picture. Thank you.
Por otro lado, ponte al otro lado. Bien.
The first project from New Zealand in Puno in the 80s showed that we could improve greatly. Unfortunately, due to the different problems like terrorism or etc., everything was deactivated and we returned to the traditional with not much interest from academia. So now we see in this workshop that there are experiences in Chile that are working. We have a second opportunity for this new project. We need to take advantage of it. We know that the most difficult is to change the minds of the people. There's a huge resilience to change, maybe because they are afraid to fail, or maybe or be pointed out as the people who failed, but we need to change. I hope that this project that has been well exposed today, and I think that has a good group of people who are working hard on it. We can produce that change that it is necessary, and also that the industry and the academia will go through a new stage, and they will support maybe to lower the production cost. Benefits everyone, the farmer because it benefits the incomes and it will have better income for his or her family. The industry, it benefits because the industry can have better incomes because of the products, and the whole country because the general improvement means an improvement for the whole country. Again, I want to thank you. Really, I don't think I deserve this award, this acknowledgement, but I accept it. I accept it because I know that you have prepared. Thank you very much. Those were the words from Young. And now, the Vice Chancellor, Enrique Flores Mariaza, he will provide a diploma as a distinguished visitor to Ambassador Jackie Kane. Doctor, please. If you can come before the table for the picture.
Gracias por su visita, gracias a Nueva Zelanda.
Thank you, New Zealand, for all the help, and we hope that the relations continue to strengthen. I'm sorry, there's no microphone, I cannot hear.
Un bombardeo. Sí. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
A continuación, el señor.
So next, the Vice Chancellor will also provide a diploma to Mr. Terry Mackler. He's Agricultural Advisor for Latin America. We need to continue working together. Yes, that's right. With the acknowledgement to Dr. Young and these diplomas, we conclude this workshop. We want to thank the presence of all of you, and we invite you to a cocktail that will be in front of this auditorium. And also I would like to point out that we have the certificates, especially to all of the participants that are not from Lima. The ones that are here in Lima, you can pick them up tomorrow. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.
Salimos. ¿Lo van a recoger dónde? ¿Dijeron dónde? Muchísimas gracias. Muy buen trabajo. Súper buen trabajo. En circunstancias a veces un poco complicado con el IT, pero bueno, perfecto.